Yo, guys, welcome back. Today we are here with, I don't even know where I'm going with this. I've just
I
lost
was
it
going to say
completely.
that's a bit different.
That's a I literally was in Teesdale MTG mode. Welcome back, guys, to Casting Comments, the show where we talk and discuss all things Pauper. I am your host, Teesdale, and this is my co-host, the bushwhacker himself, Reese.
Hello.
You do not make mistakes like I do. Look at that. That was flawless. So, guys, before we start, please do not forget to hit that like and subscribe button and also follow wherever you are listening or watching so you never miss an upload. It's also great because it helps the algorithm and helps with exposure. It's a really great way to support us and it's free. Right, we finished chilling out. So, pal, what have you been up to?
um, Pretty light, to be honest, magic-wise for me this week.
Mm.
The main thing I did was play F&M,
Mm-hmm.
which this month's Pauper again, which is sweet. I ended up basically just playing a fairly stock Kuldotha list. I had like a slightly tweaked sideboard.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, ended up coming first, beat Mono Blue Fair, Mono Black Aggro, and a close final game against Blue White Glitters. But yeah, Kuldotha's strong. And I think at the moment it like feels more solved than it ever really has.
Mm.
Like the variety in the lists just isn't there anymore. It's basically just a set list.
Yeah, it seems like that.
Which is weird.
It's also, I think it's a sort of good thing. There is obviously people experimenting with certain things, like obviously Carbs is having a lot of success with like the munitions in the main. But yeah, ultimately overall the flex slots have definitely gotten smaller.
Yeah. And I
Sure.
think that the experiments feel more like experiments as well.
Mm.
Whereas like previously we had like different variants of the deck, like
Yeah.
one drops and the impulse variant and all that. Now we essentially just have
One
one
deck.
variant, which is sort of the one drops deck, like everything costs one, but it doesn't play like Petal and Mutagenic Growth.
Yeah.
But that feels like the variant, and then
Yeah.
everything else feels like a sort of an experiment, which is
Mm.
a bit weird. But yeah, it was very good. If anyone is interested in Kuldotha, I believe Selka's did a primer on it,
Yeah, he
which
did.
was quite interesting and definitely worth reading if you're wanting to get into Kuldotha and want to play it more.
Yeah. It was a good read, to be fair. And I
Mm.
don't even like Cold and I thought it was a good read.
It's also good to read if you don't like Kuldotha and you want to beat it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a solid one.
What about yourself?
So yeah, I've just had a lot of, as I've had for the past 3 weeks, I've just tested a lot, to be fair. This time I've kind of talked myself, I think I've talked myself out of playing Jeskai Glitters. Maybe. Maybe. So I'm kind of looking at Mogwarts and Blue-Black Control. Or maybe Blue-Red. So if those may have seen, obviously I put a poll out there to play before MKM came out. I don't think I'm going to get a chance to do it before it comes out, but I will be, it'll be the first video I do with it out, and obviously Mogwarts won. So I'll definitely be trying that with, say, Demand Answers. And it's really weird because as we get down, obviously it has made an appearance, but then also the other list, like from Hamuda, who's the Mogwarts master, doesn't run Grim Search. It runs the Fanatical Offering, the one that makes a map.
Oh
And
yeah, sweet.
the more I keep playing with Deadly Dispute and Fanatical Offering, like the amount of games I've won because of the treasure or the map resetting the Putrid Goblin, it's like, this
Yeah.
card is good. Like,
Yeah, that's quite a nice interaction with the map. I hadn't really thought about that, to be honest.
the amount of people I've got because you think that a lot of people end up holding up interaction and stuff like that and then end up stop doing what they're doing, that you eventually just have that many ways of comboing off anyways that you just beat the amount of interaction they've got. Like I've beat like piles, like people have had like 4 pieces of interaction with the combo and you've just had that much to re-combo because they've just wasted that much time. You just get them anyways, and maps definitely been part of that in a few of them.
I think a lot of the time as well, like once the goblin's down to a 1/1, like people just tend to leave
Yeah,
it in play, like because it's just pseudo not a threat anymore.
yeah,
But if you can, yeah, just end of turn, like draw some cards, sack a guy, and then reset it with a map, and combo off. It's pretty pretty spicy.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think just being able to chain, like we said about gardens, where you run out of sacrifice fodder, the fact that your disputes just chain into your offerings and vice versa, rather than like the grim searches and stuff, not chaining into each other. It's pretty interesting.
It's definitely been fun. I think most of my losses, to be fair, are me making incredible amount of mistakes because the deck's very complicated. Like one time I accidentally F6'd my persist, not F6, my or yielded my persist trigger and then didn't respond. I was like, what am I doing? Like, to be fair, there's one game that I definitely lost, which was fine. Like, I think I went 4-1 in the first league into a 2-1 that turned into a 2-3 was my second league, which basically bar one game, all the losses were my own mistakes, which is good in a sense because it obviously means that I can improve on it, to be fair. But and blue black controls been fun.
Hopefully they're sort of like modo mistakes as well. Like you're not gonna auto yield your persist trigger in paper.
Yeah, some of them have, majority of them have been like letting something resolve when I didn't mean to, but others have been, oh, it's okay, I'll keep this hand because I've got like 2 great furnaces and a chromatic star, and then I have a deadly dispute or something, or I have a fanatical off, and then I don't see a black source. It's like, this hand's probably not keepable if you're not finding a black source, if you know what I mean. But yeah, it was good. I'm fun with it. Blue black controls strong as well. I can't complain. I ran a league to that, and it's pretty good.
It seems like a deck that's just gained a lot lately. Sort of out of nowhere, really, but it just all sort of came together to actually be a thing.
Yeah, for sure. Would like to move on to some news?
Yeah, go for it.
So we have some small amount of news. So on the 30th of January, I believe, in a random Magic Online announcement thing, suck it up into that, they decided that obviously they've divvied out all the 64 challenges, like which one's going to be a 64, which one's going to be a 32 in all different formats. But what they've done with some of them on that announcement is that some of the 64 challenges were not firing due to like Christmas or random other reasons. So basically what they've done is they've added a second challenge to that Sunday, i.e. the 64 challenge, and then 15, I think it is, 15 minutes or half an hour later or whatever, there's a 32 player challenge, which the idea behind that is if the 64 doesn't fire, at least the rest of them have chance to join and play the 32. But because they are also 2 separate events that are just scheduled in, there's now 2 challenges on a Sunday. So we have 2 challenges to cover. But I don't know if you want to touch on the pros and cons of this now, or if you want to touch on it further down the line.
I think we may as well talk about it now, because it is sort of some pretty severe pros and cons.
Yeah.
I guess, I think firstly, just the sort of way it's been done is a bit odd. Like we were firing 64 player challenges up until Christmas, and then numbers were down over Christmas because it's Christmas. So then they just removed the 64 challenge, and then we finally got it put back, but then with this extra challenge, which I don't quite understand.
Yeah, I feel like my only thing is I feel like, I know obviously Magic Online's an outdated program, but surely there has to be a way where they can have one challenge, and then if it hits 32 players, it is this prize support. If it hits 64 players, it is this prize support. I just, surely it's not that difficult. Surely.
Yeah. Or also you could just have, if the first challenge fires, the second one just does. He's no longer a thing. Like the second one only activates if the first one doesn't fire.
That would make too much sense.
For anyone wondering sort of why we're going on about this, essentially all it means is the first challenge, everyone tends to just play as normal. And then the second challenge is sort of just a free extra challenge. So everyone just double queues into it. So it's like the results are massively skewed to really aggressive decks because most of the people played it are double queuing from the first challenge. So they play that actual deck they want to play in the first challenge, and then the second challenge is just loads of Kuldotha or like Bogles and weird stuff like that.
Yeah, so obviously with it being half an hour apart as well, they did say, a lot of the grinders said that basically unless they top eighted, it didn't actually overlap that much, especially if they had aggressive deck slash playing fast in the first one, the 64,
Yeah.
and then obviously they were playing a fast deck in the 32. So there was, for the most part, someone did a tally up that most of the people just double queued Burn or Kuldotha in both Sunday challenges. But there was some people that did normal deck that they wanted to play Sunday and 64, and then normal people on the 32 that just played a really fast deck, i.e. Jeskai Glitters or Kuldotha or whatever. And yeah, there's some, obviously there is people like his grinders. I know two obviously in particular was Bako and Luffy, who basically just double queued the deck that they had known for. They both double queued Affinity and they both Affinity and Fairies. And I do think that Bako did say that eventually he just struggled. Like you're playing Fairies, like I get that. GN said he had to he was in the top eight and he or something like that, and he had to basically concede one of his games because he was losing to time on the other one because he was in the top eight, and it's and like this sort of thing is a problem to me. It definitely is. Like there's pros and cons to it. Don't wrong in the sense that obviously the prizes, it does show that these aggressive decks are strong or stronger than obviously, or they are in a position of being strong. But to me, the main thing that it doesn't give you a true reflection of the state of the format.
Yeah. Yeah, you get more results, but the results are just super skewed.
100%.
And I think especially when like the PFP are looking at results, and obviously Ullman does his article on like percentage of decks in challenges and in top eights and such. Now adding this result into those just makes it all a bit weird.
Like we could get to a point now where experimental synthesizers banned 3 months down the line because of look how broken it is based on challenge results.
Yeah,
Where
and it's one challenge a week is massively Kuldotha heavy.
yeah, and like don't get me wrong, if people are versing glitters or Kuldotha and they think that these are a problem, sure, but it's not giving you because like for me, in my thought in my head, like Kuldotha and glitters are strong, but ultimately it's probably just a mix of the 5 or 7 decks that are like tier 1 or tier 1.5 or whatever you want to call it. Like it's just one of another viable option, and I don't think it's the best thing to be doing. But if in 3 months' time you get in top eights that are just burn, 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 it's obviously going to look like burn's the best thing you can be doing, but it's
Yeah.
not. It's doing Magic Online.
Yeah, yeah, it is an odd one. Hopefully Daybreak will sort something out that's a better solution than this. Obviously it is nice to have the option of a challenge, a smaller challenge to fire if the initial one doesn't. But from what we've been seeing, the initial one isn't really at risk of not firing. So yeah.
Yeah, it is odd. Yeah. I guess my final point before I move on is that the thing I don't like, the thing that makes this worse is that Magic Online in general already has an aggressive bias, in my
Yeah.
opinion,
Oh yeah, yeah.
because you would rather play leagues, you would rather play them at effectively 1.5 hours a league to run a league with Jeskai Glitters with red or whatever than a 5 to 4 hour league or whatever it is with Corgate. And people who are grinders are gonna play the fastest deck and get the biggest outcome. If say Corgate has a 57% win rate and then Corgate has a 60% win rate, I'd take that 3% gap to run half the time, to run twice as many leagues. You're just going to get you're gonna get more EV out of that in the long run. So you're just obviously biased.
Yeah.
And this makes it worse is more my point.
Yeah, especially when you're looking at it and you're playing like 14 plus rounds.
Mm.
You want to play a deck that is fast. You can play one round, go and get a drink, jump into the second challenge, play one round, then start the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to be switching between them constantly, but the fact that they are there is enough temptation that people will just double queue them
Yeah.
and just do as we say, just run more aggressive decks in one or both.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else to add to that amazingness?
No, no.
So tournament news. So the Northern Pauper Open is happening on the 18th of February 2024. And if you have not bought a ticket, unlucky because this event has sold out. Both of us are attending. If you have got a ticket, we will see you there. And yeah, that's about it. Unlucky.
Yeah.
You should have listened to us earlier.
I think there is a wait list. If you've left it till now, not bought a ticket, and you want to go. There's obviously no guarantee that a ticket will become available, but if someone does drop out, there is a wait list.
That's how awesome this event is. There is a wait list. Finally, obviously, there's a Pauper 2K in Binghamton, New York, held at Dragon Master Games on the February 24th. There's also one on April the 6th, but that whatever. They are guaranteed $2,000 prize pool to the top 8 and goes to the top 16 if they receive 50 or more players. There is a 100-player cap, so if you'd like to go, please see the description below for all the event information and how to get your tickets. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Apart from follow Pauper Dan for the other UK events that have gone around.
Yeah.
Again, we're not going to advertise them all, otherwise we'd be here all day. Would you like to move on to the Saturday challenges?
Yeah, so Saturday the 27th was a 32 challenge, even though there was 65 players in it. First place was Blue Black Terror. Second place was Dredge. Third place was Blue Red Terror Control. Fourth was Jeskai Wildfire. Fifth was Jeskai Glitters. Sixth was Kuldotha. Seventh was Turbo Fog. And eighth was Mugwort. And then the two near misses, ninth was Walls, and 10th was Flickertron. As I initially said there's 65 players, so it could have been a 64 challenge rather than a 32 challenge. But that's by the by. But yeah, a pretty interesting top 10, to be honest, very varied. Obviously, aggro, control, and combo all represented, which is super nice to see in Pauper. And probably a lot more combo than we are used to, especially if you count Dredge's combo. It's sort of mid-range sort of combo. But with Turbo Fog and Mugwort there, as well as the Walls in 9th, that's a lot more combo than we've been seeing the past few weeks.
Yeah. Firstly, the other thing I need to add is the Dredge and Blue Black Terror first second was a split.
Right, okay.
It was a split because Dan, I can't remember the name of the first player, but I think it's Daniel is doing a race with Mogged for the most wins in challenges. So,
Nice.
so the split to make that gentleman win, which is quite a shame because Kirby, who was playing Dredge, I do think that matchup probably favoured. To be honest, It probably favours Dredge in my opinion. So, yeah, a bit of a shame that we couldn't have had a Dredge win. Yeah,
I think especially looking at the Blue Black Terror sideboard and even main deck, obviously they've got a few counter spells, but they're really light on Graveyard Hit with basically a single spell bomb and a Rotten Reunion, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would have probably been quite a good time for Dredge. Kirby's list as well is quite interesting with the 3 Exhumes in the main, which I know you've tried before as well. But it seems like it could be quite a powerful play, especially on turn 2, when you've got the 4 Trolls and 4 Ents. It's probably quite a 2-mana, I win the game on turn 2.
Yeah. So, ultimately, if you haven't seen, so Kirby is obviously a content creator, doesn't normally record challenges, but has recorded this one coincidentally, and you can check it out on his YouTube channel. But I have tried a list similar to this. I think the only difference main was I cut a land, but he's cut a Maya Triton instead of what I changed. So he's got 3 Acorn Harvest, 3 Knot to the Bone for the 3 Exhume. But I think what seems really well positioned for him there in that league is the Rare Revelation in the sideboard. Is one thing that I didn't have, and it seems really great. It seems to help the core game matchup, which to me was quite bad. It definitely helps that matchup. Obviously helps against other enchantment-y things that you need to worry about. But I also have watched this video, and when I spoke to him about the Exhume, I asked him if he thought it was good, because when I played it, it was ultimately not that great. You effectively had it, if I drew it late game, it didn't matter. I had a bazillion Dread Returns in the graveyard and stuff. And then obviously if you're milling it, it doesn't matter whatsoever. Yeah. But in his, I think it was round 2 against Kuldotha, game 3 mulled to 5, and it literally went turn 2 Troll Exhume, turn 3 Ent exhumed, and I'm like, I'm not surprised you think this is good. Like, you literally got turn 2, turn 3 on a multi 5, and he had, I'm going to exhume one of these, and then just buried the opponent who just sat down an Epicurean player as he had an Ent staring at him and hitting him for 6. I was like, no wonder. No wonder you think it was good.
Yeah, it definitely has a high upside in that
Yeah.
deck. Obviously, it does essentially nothing other than being on turn 2. Like, if you don't have it in your opener, it's probably a bad card. But if you do, it's just, it's going to be really good.
I think, to be fair, ultimately, I think that what the cuts are key because you need to keep the creature count high. But I think, personally, probably moving forward, I may look at like cutting like a Lotless Giant to keep the 2-mana mill guys going because obviously they're key to the deck. And maybe something like that. But I do think that the initial 2 cuts of the Acorn Harvest and the Northerborn are definitely key. And Exhume definitely does look good. Maybe you need 4 of. Maybe 4 of will sweeten the deal and make it even better. But definitely interesting deck list. The other thing I guess I have to mention is about glitters. Obviously, great to see random glitters appearing in top 8s. I guess the list's fairly straightforward. I think it's Walker's list in the main, but they've got the Pauper again inside where they've got all the acolytes and the standard bearers and stuff. And it seems like the standard sort of thing.
Yeah, it's obviously the essentially Boros Splash Blue for Thoughtcast. But yeah, obviously Jeskai Glitters seems pretty good at the moment. Not dominating by any stretch, but always just there at the top. Are there any other decks you want to touch on out of this top 8 or top 10?
No, I guess I just want to touch on it was Ritual Sinkhole yet again with Turbo Fog with the same list. So, and I guess finally the comment I had of the 64 players and 32. It really helps if they just had an event that just changed based on player base. That would also be great. You know, we would have had a 64 player prize pool, but here we are. Moving on to Sunday 64.
Yeah, so the first Sunday challenge, which is on the 28th, 84 players, so a really strong turnout. First place was Jeskai Wildfire. Second place was Boros Synth. Third was Blue Black Fate. Fourth and fifth were 2 Kuldothas. Sixth was Blue White Glitters. Seventh was Rakdos Madness. And eighth was Turbo Fog, again, which was Ritual Single. And then the 2 near misses, ninth was Turbo Fog and 10th was Kuldotha. So yeah, another pretty interesting top 8. I think this is where you start to see the slight bias of the double Q challenges. Obviously a lot more Kuldotha and aggressive decks in this top 8. But still pretty varied.
Yeah.
Obviously Rakdos Madness is the one deck that I thought was a pretty sweet one to see back.
Yeah, I did see them tweet about it. I can't remember who it was. Like, obviously, I know it's Fur MT. I can't remember the actual Twitter name, but they were talking about how the top 8 with this, and they thought it was quite well positioned. But I can't remember if they were saying like they were newish to the format or something. They were basically saying like Scrapwork Mutler's House, which a given.
Yeah.
I do like the inclusion of Tomb Raider though instead of the Swift Spear that it used to be.
Yeah.
It's definitely sweet.
Yeah, obviously, it still works pretty well in this deck because you've got so many artifacts as well. And yes, Scrapwork Mutt is just sort of performing in most most decks it gets put in.
Yeah. I also like that they've sort of adjusted to like to have some sort of deadly disputeness. Like they're only running 2 here, but that sort of plunder effect's really good. And it's glad to see that deadly disputes obviously seen playing in them because they weren't for quite a while. And they've got, as you say, they've got so many artifacts. It's basically free.
Yeah.
But blood aggro is good.
Yeah, it's a sweet one. Obviously, Tithe and Blade is a pretty big addition to this deck as well, being an artifact. And the Edict, so it's got 4 jammed in the sideboard for those Terror matchups.
Makes sense.
Other than that, I didn't notice too much interest in the Kuldotha decks. One is fairly stock. The other is sort of a bit experimenty with a single Goblin Grenade, and 2 impulses in the main. And essentially just trimmed on galvanic blasts and a bushwhacker to fit them in. Other than that,
Yeah,
they're both fairly similar.
I believe this is where obviously the guy that you were saying that was experimental. They top forward both, I believe, because they were double queuing along with Baco as well, who obviously was double queuing with, but he was double queuing with fairies on both halves. But definitely pretty sweet. Um, yeah, there's nothing really standing out to me here. Obviously, you've got blue white glitters instead of Jeskai glitters, and it's a fairly
Yeah.
stock list with the one of Phyrexian Walker. Interesting to see if that becomes a whatever the card's called, the new Thraven Inspector next week.
Yeah, I always find this an odd include. It's something that Las Vegas Chaos always seems to have, is this one of Phyrexian Walker instead of of One Mind.
Hmm.
And I just don't really get it. I don't really get what it's doing there.
Just wants an Ornithopter that can also attack, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, you want the 5th Ornithopter,
Yeah.
but yeah, interesting.
Mm.
Other than that, yeah, fairly stock blue white list. I think most of the list, to be fair, in this top 8 were sort of as you'd expect.
Yeah.
Other than that bit of experimentation from Kuldotha.
Yeah.
Um,
I tend to agree, and I think the Boros as well is, I would say, generally very stock. It's got main deck relics. Um, the odd, it's kind of cut down on journeys and stuff like that. It's got strange numbers, but generally is very stock. It's not running Foundry Helix, and it's still got 3 copies of Barb Batfist, and I don't think the deck's really changed too much in a long time, to be fair.
yeah. I still find it quite interesting that Boros Synth just does keep occasionally putting up results, and it hasn't just converted itself to a glitters deck.
Mm.
It seems like one of those decks that you could sort of just tweak the mana base in it and then play 4 glitters.
Yeah.
Obviously you've got the evasion with the Skyfishes and Squadron Hawks, and then all your card advantage is artifact. You've already got some artifact lands in there anyway.
Mm.
But no, just yeah, keeps plowing on as it did at Pauper getting all that time ago.
Yeah. It just keeps putting up results. Um, Anything else you'd like to add, or would you like to move on to the next challenge, the interesting one?
Yeah, just I guess the last thing is just how nice it is to see like 84 player 65 player challenge into 84 player challenge. It shows that people are still very interested in Pauper. The format's obviously in a really good place at the moment. There's so much variety. It's a bit weird in this next challenge because of how skewed it was to the double queues. But generally, yeah, it's sweet, and we're seeing a lot of different decks top 8.
Yeah, and it's not too far out what we're normally seeing either. It's obviously we're like 60 odd to 70 odd, but we've pushed up to 80 here, and it's still good to see that we're still doing high results. Like I feel like we were averaging like 50 on the Saturday and then like 70 on the Sunday, so definitely seems like we're still
pretty
doing
much.
quite high. Yeah.
So the second Sunday challenge, obviously also on the 28th, was 46 players, so a lot less players. A lot of these players are double queuing. First place is Kuldotha Red. Second place is Blue Black Fair. Third place is Kuldotha Red. Fourth place is Kuldotha Red. Fifth is Walls. Sixth is Blue Red Scred. Seventh is Bogles, and eighth is Kuldotha Red. And then the 2 near misses. 9th was Dredge, and 10th was Blue Black Fair. So yeah, obviously a lot more skewed of a top 8 than the previous 2, with a lot of Kuldotha Red in there. One thing I noticed is there was also a lot of Dredge in the top 16, like way more than I expected. But I guess that sort of fits into the sort of double queue, like fast-ish deck. You just want to play something that you can just sort of not think as much as your main deck, I guess maybe. But what was a 4 Dredge decks in the top 16? And gone from it basically disappeared like the last few weeks. It had that one good result, then disappeared, and then it's been it came second and did it top 10 as well. Yeah, come ninth. and then a bunch in the top 16. It's pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm. I guess it also lends itself to the fact that Daybreaker, obviously, as soon as basically the event's done, the results are up. Really
Yeah.
does lean towards that. Obviously, people get access to obviously Kirby's list basically straight away for Sunday. Be interesting to see if they were double queuing. Obviously, I haven't really checked out. We could check that out because you can now check out because literally every player is in both deck lists, so you could literally search the name of the pilot in the other one and see if they were double queuing. But yeah, it's nice to see that was a lot of dredge and a lot of dredge just missing out on top eight. Obviously, 9th to 16th is effectively on breakers almost for the most part.
As you say, with the deck list as well, there was only one that wasn't basically a copy paste of Kirby's list.
Yeah.
And the one that wasn't was 15th place, and it was sort of a bit more of an experimental list, I'm gonna say. Playing 3 Writhing Necromass, which is a 7-mana 5/5 Death Touch that costs 1 less to cast for each creature in your graveyard. And it's also playing like a Miser, Oliphant, and 2 Crawling Infestation, which is like a 3-mana green enchantment that mills you 2 in your upkeep. And whenever 1 or more creature cards are put in your graveyard from anywhere, create a 1/1. But it triggers only once a turn.
Yeah, so this list sort of, there was a list from, I want to say his name's C.O. Sigara springs to mind. I could be saying that wrong. Apologise if I've absolutely bastardized your name. That was in the 5/0, one of the 5/0 deck dumps recently, which it didn't run the Necromass, but it basically ran the Oliphant, changed a bunch of the numbers to fit like a Grizzly Salvage in, but then had Crawl and Infestation in the sideboard. So I'm assuming this is kind of where they've based this off. I'm guessing with the Oliphant in the main, and then kind of seeing how good Crawl Infestation is, maybe tried it in the main, and then maybe thought, let's try some Necromass, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting because even the sideboard is very different from what we've seen from Dredge. All the other lists sort of tend to have everything in the sideboard you can flash back. Where it has the 4 Ancient Grudge, but then everything else is just like a normal, I'm gonna say, sideboard card. So like Fairy Macabres, Red Blasts, Drowning Sorrow, and like a Miser de Gleamer. So yeah, pretty interesting take.
I bet this at one point had a Tortured Existence in the deck. That's where I'm at. This
you
one
hope at one point you had it in.
It definitely. You are not putting Necromass and Fairy Macabre in your deck, which is milling a bunch, if you did not have some Tortured Existence. That's where I'm going. But yeah, interesting list for sure. But yeah, as we've already touched on, it's very skewed towards aggro with 4 Kuldotha in the top 8 and the Bogles.
Yeah.
Like, this is
you can see when you sort of scroll down the deck lists page as well, there's just Kuldotha after Kuldotha.
Yeah.
Which it's obviously it's nice that we get an extra challenge, but it's just odd to try and glean any information from. It sort of skews more results than it actually helps, I think.
Yeah, for sure. But obviously, as we've mentioned, Gian had to. I think he conceded the 64 challenge because he was obviously in the top 8 game here. With Walls, is my understanding, or he conceded this because he was. I can't remember. He conceded one of them anyways because it was the only game that like overlapped.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you can see, I think Baker obviously came second here, as well as top 4 the other one, which is pretty good going.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see if everyone keeps up this kind of thing as well, because especially for the likes of Baker and like Luffy and things who are playing the same deck in both challenges, like that is a real mental strain to keep that up. So it'd be interesting to see if they do either change their approach and obviously have a more aggressive slant in the 32 or whatever, or if they just give up on that entirely and just focus on the 64 with the better prize pool, assuming they always fire.
Yeah, it's got to be tough, especially if your games start overlapping and you're playing Blue Black Fae against Kuldotha in one challenge, and then in the other challenge you're also playing Blue Black Fae against Kuldotha. I can imagine it gets pretty easy to get a bit mixed up on where you are and what you're doing between games.
Yeah, for sure. and Eco Baronen, I guess, is also there again with the other top 4, the same list with the Miser End, the Festivities, and Goblin Grenade and such. And the one of Golf Blast.
Yeah, interesting.
Other than that, yeah, it's pretty. There's not a lot you can. It's nice to see Bogles, I guess, but again, when you're aggressively slanted, when everything's Kuldotha, is it really a surprise? Like, I wouldn't be surprised if this pilot just versed Kuldotha the whole time. Smashed a bunch of Spirit Links on stuff and kind of went there.
Yeah, it's sort of quite an old Bogles list as well. There's no All That Glitters at all.
Yeah.
It's sort of just a pre All That Glitters Bogles list, which is interesting because I have seen a lot of them cutting All That Glitters lately. So just going back to the old school is an interesting take.
Yeah, I guess in terms of like you don't get anywhere near as high as glitters
Mask.
do. Yeah, like so your +1/+1's not as big. So I guess Mask obviously just goes to town in comparison. So I guess why not? For the sake of 1 mana, does it matter that much?
Yeah.
Maybe not. Yeah.
Interestingly, it's only got 1 Spirit Link in the full 75 as well. So.
Yeah. I guess
it definitely wasn't prepared for Kuldotha, but it sort of just worked out.
Yeah, just hope that Armadillo Cloak was good enough, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely interesting to see that again. And that's pretty much all I've got to say, really. The
yeah.
Scred deck was fairly stock, I guess. The blue-red Scred. Nothing too exciting. Yeah. Coolio. So we have an additional one, which is I don't have an actual link for the deck lists for this, but it's the next level Pauper event in Brazil. The tournament was up on Cards Realms. I think someone like Tiago Fugueta or Ricardo kind of shared the link, but I'm not gonna lie, it's really awkward to kind of decipher where it is because you can like select your different stand-ins as who's the top 8 at that time. I got lost, I'm not gonna lie. I managed to click the last one, so I don't actually know if this is in the fully correct order. I do believe it is in my deciphering of the website, Tournament Viewer, but anyways, my understanding there was 106 players, and the top 8, this matched up to Ricardo's dump of this was the top 8, so I'm hoping this is the right order. So in first place was FAMS.
If it makes you feel any more confident, it's completely different to the order that's on MTG top 8, but
let's go.
The decks seem to be the same.
We're mostly the way there. So I have this as the first place was FAMS. The second place was also FAMS. The third place was Gardens. The fourth place was Gardens. The fifth place was Blue-Black Control. Sixth place was Blue-Black Fair. Seventh was Ultratron. And 8th was Gardens. Does that sort of marry up to top 8? Or
the decks are the same, but the order's completely different. But
completely different?
Yeah, so I've on top 8 firsts, Terra, seconds, Ultratron. And then it's just 3rd and 4th are both the same position, then 5th and 8th. And
yeah.
But I wouldn't put much faith in top 8 either.
So there you go. So I'd check it out for yourself because, yeah, to be fair, the first time I read this, I sent the link to Callie and said, look, Ultratron's won. So, or Ultratron's come second. Or I said something like that. And then he opened it, he said, Ultratron's not come second. So I have no idea. Anyways, so that is also that. Also, to near misses, the 2 near misses was Black White Blade or Hopeless Blade or whatever you want to call it. It's basically the Black White Blade with Hopeless Nightmare in.
Yeah.
And 10th place was Kuldotha Red. Yeah. My main thing with this is how different it is to online meta or online top 8s, and that is basically because of how Paper plays. Is so much different at Magic Online. You don't add click intensive. All these click intensive decks are so much easier. Ultratron and FAMS in particular.
Yeah, I think they're obviously the main culprits that we mention often, that basically FAMS is super good and Ultratron is super good, but they just see a lot less play on Magic Online, mostly because they are click intensive, but also because the aggressive bias of Magic Online.
Yep.
But it's a sweet top 8 overall, regardless of the order, really. There's a lot of gardens, I would say. But I do tend to find that with paper events is people just seem to like playing gardens in paper.
To be fair, it's much better to play in paper than it is online.
Yeah. But yeah, sweet to see Ultratron do well. We've obviously not seen it in a long time, covering mostly Magic Online challenges. And yeah, blue black control again, just constantly showing up nowadays.
Deck's strong. Yeah, that's like I don't think there was anything surprisingly like out there either. So like the Gardens list looked fairly stock from memory. The FAMS decks were FAM decks. FAMs are pretty well positioned. Obviously, if the top 8 order is correct, I am surprised that both FAMs came first and second with all the Gardens in the side. In the top 8. Snuff out matchups are generally pretty hard for them and initiative matchups, but if they come prepared with all their essence scatter effects, usually I'm not too surprised, I guess.
Yeah, just looking for the lists on here. The gardens are all fairly different. One of them's main deck and Drowning Sorrows. One of them's on the Guildsworn Prowler.
All right, okay.
And one is just sort of a stock, like what I would call a stock gardens list. And yeah, there's also a Dredge top 16, which again is sweet to see that deck doing well. After essentially just disappearing after its debut.
Yeah, it's nice to see Dredge, to be fair, and I guess this shows that it might show that obviously a lot of people say that different regions have different kind of biases to what they play and stuff, but it seems like a very controlly mid-range kind of meta game if that's the case, which I wouldn't put too much stock in, to be fair, because most decks, to be fair, Bad Glitters and Kuldotha are pretty much mid-rangey. But it's definitely...
It does feel very biased, though, with obviously the 3 gardens, the 2 blue-black-esque control decks, the 2 FAMs, and then down the rest of the top 16, there's another gardens, there's 2 gates. There's obviously the black-white blade list, and there's a blue-red scred list as well. So you've only sort of got, there's 2 Kuldothas, a Dredge, and a Tron that aren't sort of mid-range control decks. The Dredge as well, just finally touching on that, is another sort of bit of a brewier Dredge. It's playing 1 Circle of the Land Druid, which is a bit like Seta Wayfinder. It's also playing 2 Faithless Lutens, which is sort of like obviously a legacy modern Dredge staple, but we haven't really seen that crop up in the Pauper Dredge lists yet.
It's interesting.
And its sideboard again is playing some Snuff Outs, which obviously you can't flash back, and a one-off Shenanigans, which is what one of the other 3 Dredge cards legal in Pauper, or however many it is.
Yeah, the Snuff Out sideboards, the list that I was talking about in the trophy that ran the Oliphant and the Crawling Infestation to the side, that was their sort of tech. They just ran 4 Snuff Outs in the side. And I'm assuming it was just to kill glitters or something like that, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And it seemed to work out. Walker was playing that list against me, and I was playing glitters, and he cast all 4 Snuff Outs on me. So I was like, fair enough. You know, you win some, you lose some. But yeah, I did try the Circle of the Land Druid. I wasn't a fan, but I could also see the reason for one, because I definitely have lost games due to not having access to the Redlands. So being able to return them isn't the worst. And you can, like, there's a lot of times where you basically double Dread Return in a turn. So you could Dread Return the Circle of the Land Druid to then Dread Return what you want and get your red land back. So it's like, it's not the end of the world, to be fair.
I think the games in particular where you want the red as well, you have that time, because you're essentially just probably wanting to flash back a Flare and Pain at some point. That's the majority of the red usage, so you have got that time to to sack your guy to get your red land back, play it tapped, or obviously if it's a one-off mountain, you can play it.
Yeah.
And then flashback your flare and pain.
Yeah. To be fair, it's mainly the game one side with the scrap work mode. I had the issues. And it definitely catches off. To be fair, I was surprised because you would think you have that many red sources in terms of the land cyclers. I generally aggressively get them because you always want access to it, I think. And yeah, just it's strange how the variance of it, obviously, is you're milling a lot of cards, like definitely adds up. But it's definitely a sweet deck for sure. And hopefully they can solidify these lists moving forward. Because I want to play some Dredge. So yes,
Maybe you should play that for the Northern Pauper Run.
I did. It was in my contention for a long time. And then I got annoyed with it, and then I stopped playing. Yeah. So, let's be honest. God knows what I'm gonna play. I don't even know myself. I wish I was that type of person that was like secretly hiding my deck, and it's absolutely solidified, and I knew what 75 I was bringing. But that is definitely not me. Like I also changed my one of my decks the day before we were going. To be fair, I've done that before, so I am not the. Even though I tested early this time as well, I was like, I'm going to get this down. Nope, not at all.
I might just go and see if we've got the cards to dredge and build that. And
Do it. I'll play it if you play it.
I don't know if we have Acorn Harvest, so
probably not. Yeah. Move on to shoutouts.
Yeah, go for
it. So shout out to. I'm just gonna shout out all the grinders at this point. Shout out all the grinders. Obviously, you guys have had a field day. You've obviously had 2 challenges on the Sunday. So Baco's obviously came second and top forward. You know, you've obviously had Eco Barnen, Mason Clark. I think I can't remember who it is. I'm not gonna lie, but congrats to you. You've obviously got a lot of.
It's Andreas Peterson, isn't it?
That one. Yeah. Congrats. Yeah. I think that's kind of it. There's nothing really else to shout out. I guess Kirby, we'll shout you out. Why not? Congrats on the 2nd place for the dredge. You should have just, fought it out. You would have got the dub. So, and I would like to say I'm cheering for you or Daniel Locas for the wins on Mogged, but I'm not holding much hope. Mogg's gonna win. Team Mogged. Woo woo woo. Yeah. Would you like to move on to hot takes?
Yeah, go for it. So from last week, my first one from last week was that we'll return to a more normal top 8 next week, with the fringe decks dying back a bit before the Murders of Markov Manor. Murders of Karlov Manor.
That one.
Release, which is next week, or this week, as you're listening to this. But we sort of didn't. Obviously, the Saturday had a lot of combo, which we normally don't see. And even the Sunday had some like sort of outliers, like the Rakdos Madness, the Boros Synth, and the Turbo Fog. Although Turbo Fog is slowly becoming a mainstay in top 8s now.
Well, I'd say Ritual Sinkhole's becoming a mainstay in top 8s.
Well, yeah.
I guess we've got to shout you out as
thing.
well. But yeah, shout out to Ritual Sinkhole. I think he's on like 4 top 8s now in a row. Something silly like that. Yeah. I guess, to be fair, your hot take kind of is flawed by... I think we put the episode out on the 28th or 27th, something like that. And then 3 days later, they announced they're basically having 2 challenges on a Sunday, which the Saturday obviously was a very all-out there top 8. Fair enough. But both Sunday challenges were effectively skewed by double queuing, almost.
Yeah.
To an extent. Less so on the 64, but still on the...
Yeah, the first Sunday challenge was pretty varied. But yeah, the second one was obviously just a bit wild. Although there was still Bogles.
Woo, Bogles. The aggro deck that you can double queue with. My next one is Turbo Fog will be one of the most represented decks in the top 16 next week. There was one Saturday, 3 on the Sunday 64, and obviously there's 0 in the 32 because it's not an aggro deck, so it's not worth playing.
Maybe that would have been the play, though. Maybe you just don't double queue. You just play Turbo Fog in the Sunday 32.
Yeah.
And then you do really well because everyone's on Kuldotha. Or you do it the other way around. You queue Kuldotha on the 64 and Turbo Fog on the 32.
Look at that. Madness. Do it.
But yeah, it definitely wasn't the most represented in the top 16.
No, for sure. You'd be surprised. It's still doing well. Obviously, Ritual Sinkhole's doing well. Last week, obviously, people did try it. Maybe worked out for them. Maybe they had the brain melted from 7 rounds of Turbo Fog. I have no idea, but Ritual Sinkhole's still performing, and I will take that.
If it makes you feel any better, my second hot take was a whiff as well. I'd said that Grixis Affinity will be represented in both top 8s after Luffy's win, and there was 0 Grixis Affinity in all 3 top 8s.
Andy was double queuing on the Sunday, but maybe that's why. Maybe he made so many mistakes on both Sundays because he was double queuing. Mine was Ponza will make a return, either blue-green or red-green, and no, it didn't happen. In all 3, again, Sunday doesn't count. You're not playing Kuldotha, so that doesn't count. But Saturday wasn't really anyway.
Yeah, I think Ponza's just sort of one of them decks that has... It's just on a big lull period, isn't it, really? We haven't seen it in ages.
Needs a new toy.
Yeah. Needs Shatoon to start playing it again.
Yeah. Instead of playing Kuldotha. Because he top A with Kuldotha as well, isn't it? A, you weren't on Ponza. B, you weren't on Mono Red Tron. C, why are you playing Kuldotha? Come on, dude.
Best EV.
Hot takes next week?
Yeah. Hot takes for next week. My first one was that we'll see a very low number of MKM cards, if any, in any of the top 8s next week. Which I'm going to say a low number is like 4 total.
What
although
is
that's
that?
Probably pretty, maybe 2.
Is that 4 in one deck or
no,
like
2 copies? 2 copies of the full top 8.
Right. Okay. I guess I'll go my other one, my last one first, I guess then. And I'm going to say Demand Answers will be the only MKM card played in next week's top 16.
And it'll be a one-off, so we're both right.
Yeah, that's it. I just... yeah. People need time to brew, don't they, I guess?
Yeah. My second one is that Dredge will top 8 once again. Obviously, it's seen it a lot of hype at the moment. There's a lot of people playing it. Seems like a reasonable take.
Definitely. Kirby's brought the hype. Medvedev, the actual brewer, does really well with stuff and things fall off. Kirby, boo! That's it. It's that sweet voice and accent that he's got going on. People just love it. My last one is not really a hot take. It's more of a lukewarm take, to be fair. And it's basically one of the challenges will have a full aggro top 8 next week, which with the Sunday 32 is pretty free, hopefully.
I wonder which challenge that will be.
So, for clarity, we weren't that far off. We had, 2? 3, I guess. We had 5 out of 8 in the Sunday 32. Blue, Black, Fair, Scred, and then Walls. Like, we weren't that far away. But we're going for the full 8 this time. And if it's 7 out of 8 and one's a Dredge, we're counting Dredge as an aggro deck. Calling it now. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, that's it from me.
So guys, thank you all for listening to Casting Commons. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please do not forget to share it with your friends, your local Pauper community, even your midwife. Let's go with that.
I'm sure you've said that one before.
Oh, come on. I'm going to write these down. I say this every week, but I'm going to start writing these down. But anyways, that is all from us at Casting Commons. Until next time, don't forget to like and subscribe and stay hydrated. Peace.
Bye.